Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm so happy you're here with me today on the English Talk community. If this is your first time listening, welcome to a space where we talk about real English for real situations. And if you've been with us for a while, welcome back. You already know that here, we believe fluency is about connection, not perfection. And today, we're diving into a topic that touches so many people who are learning English: how to understand and respond in English when you're traveling, shopping, or eating out. Let me start with a question. Have you ever been standing in front of a cashier or sitting in a restaurant abroad, and suddenly you couldn't understand what the other person just said? Your heart starts beating faster, and maybe you freeze. You try to smile, but inside you're thinking, what did they just say? Was that a question? Am I supposed to answer now? That moment of panic is something many learners go through, and you're not alone. I've heard this same story from so many people around the world. But what if I told you that your listening skills, just your listening, could help you feel calm and confident in that moment? Today, I want to invite you to begin a new kind of listening journey. One that's not about understanding every word or sounding like a native speaker or memorizing complex grammar rules. No. This journey is about hearing what matters, recognizing the rhythm of real conversations, and knowing how to respond even if you only catch a few key words. That's what we're focusing on today. Let's think about travel for a moment. Imagine yourself in an airport. Announcements are coming through the speakers. People are speaking fast. The accent might be unfamiliar, but here's the truth. You don't need to understand the full sentence. You just need to hear the important words: your gate number, the word delayed, the word boarding, or your city. That's enough. Listening for purpose, not perfection. That's your new goal. Or imagine you're in a little shop in Edinburgh. The cashier asks you something with a friendly smile. You didn't catch the whole thing, but you heard bag. So you nod and say, "No bag, thank you." That's it. That's communication. That's success. And I'll show you how to build these listening skills with ease and confidence. We're going to explore some real-life stories today. You'll meet people like Carla from Madrid, who missed an announcement at a train station in London, but figured out what to do just by recognizing a few key phrases. Or Jorge from Lisbon, who used to avoid talking in restaurants, but learned how to respond with confidence by focusing on common restaurant questions. Their experiences will help you see what's possible when you stop chasing perfect English and start listening with purpose. And I want you to know something very important. This podcast is your safe space. There's no pressure here, no judgment. You can relax and just listen. I'll speak clearly, and I'll walk you through everything step by step. And if you hear something helpful today, something that makes you think, yes, I can do that, then I ask you to do two things. First, pause for a moment and feel proud of yourself. You're doing something amazing. You're improving. And second, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the podcast. It helps us grow, and it helps other learners like you find a place where they feel supported and understood. You don't need perfect grammar to travel. You don't need a long list of vocabulary to go shopping. You just need a few listening tools, a few useful phrases, and the belief that your English is good enough to be used today. Not tomorrow. Today. Now, let's set the tone for today's episode. I want you to take a deep breath with me. Just a small one. Let your shoulders relax. Let your mind slow down. You are here, and you are learning. That's enough. Forget about school English. Forget about the pressure to speak perfectly. Today, you are simply going to hear English. You're going to notice patterns, sounds, rhythm, and you're going to see how that can transform how you feel the next time you're standing in line at a cafe, waiting to board your flight, or asking someone for directions. I'll share techniques that work in real life. Not the kind you find in old textbooks, but the kind that help you in real situations. When the waiter is fast, when the shop is loud, when you're tired and just want to find your gate or order your lunch, this is real-life English, and you can absolutely handle it. Many of you have written to me saying things like, "Julia, I understand English in movies, but I panic when someone talks to me at the airport." Or, "I studied English for years, but I couldn't follow the server at the restaurant last week." And I always say the same thing. It's not about what you know, it's about what you practice. Listening is a skill you can train, just like a muscle. And the more you practice with clear purpose, the stronger it becomes. So, Are you ready to begin this new kind of practice with me today? Are you ready to listen for what matters, not for every single word? I believe you are, and I'll be here with you every step of the way. You've already done something powerful. You've shown up. You pressed play. You're here. Let's turn those uncomfortable travel moments into calm, confident experiences. Let's take those confusing shop conversations and turn them into opportunities to connect. And let's stop being afraid of fast English and start embracing it, one small step at a time. You're going to hear stories that feel familiar. You're going to recognize yourself in these moments. And when that happens, I hope you smile. Because that's how we grow. Through real practice, real situations, and real stories. This is your invitation. Listen, notice, learn. One phrase at a time. One situation at a time. Let's begin. Let me tell you about Carla. She's from Madrid, and she had been planning her trip to London for months. She was so excited. She had been studying English for years, mostly in school, but she never had many chances to practice in real-life situations. Still, she felt ready. She had booked a nice place to stay, made a list of places to visit, and had even memorized a few useful phrases for getting around the city. Everything felt under control, until she arrived at one of the busiest train stations in London. It was early in the morning, and the station was already full of people rushing in different directions. There were signs everywhere, multiple platforms, and fast announcements coming from the speakers. The voice was British, formal, and clear, but much faster than what Carla was used to. She stood still for a second, trying to process what she had just heard. She caught something like, "expected to arrive at," and then the rest was gone. Another announcement followed right after, but again it was too fast. She looked at the screen above the platform, but she wasn't sure which train was hers. Carla felt a small wave of panic rising in her chest. She remembered the platform number printed on her ticket, but when she looked up, the sign said something different. Was the platform changed? Was her train delayed? She looked around. People seemed to know exactly where to go. She didn't want to bother anyone, but she also didn't want to miss her train. She had less than 10 minutes left. She told me that in that moment she wanted to run away. Not literally, but she wanted to give up and just find someone to fix the situation for her. But then she stopped. She remembered something she had heard on this podcast. You don't need every word. You just need the right words. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a second, and reminded herself to listen again, this time with a purpose. When the next announcement came, she didn't try to understand the full sentence. She listened only for 3 things: platform numbers, the word delayed, and the name of the city she was going to. That's it. She blocked out everything else. This time, she heard something that made sense. She caught platform 9, delayed, 10:12 to Manchester. That was her train. It was delayed, and it had moved to platform 9. She turned, walked over, and found the right spot just in time. Later, when she told me this story, she said something that stayed with me. It wasn't about knowing more English. It was about listening in a different way. I stopped trying to hear everything. I started listening for what I needed. This small change made a huge difference. And this is exactly what I want to share with you today. When you're in places like train stations, airports, or even loud shopping centers, you don't have to catch every single word. Real-life English is full of extra details that your brain doesn't need in the moment. The key is to train your ear to filter out what's not important and focus on the clues that help you make decisions. Let's break this down together. Think about how announcements are structured. They often include a greeting or opening line, followed by the important information, and then maybe a closing sentence. You don't need to listen to the greeting or the final words. Your focus should be on those middle parts, the words that give you the time, the place, the change in schedule, or the direction. One thing you can start practicing is listening to real announcements from travel apps or public transportation websites. Many of them have recordings or even videos you can use. Listen once to the full sentence and then listen again just for keywords. Practice picking out words like gate, boarding, canceled, next stop, arrival, departure, and of course the names of cities or stations. What Carla did that day is something you can do too. It's not about being fluent or fast, it's about being calm and focused. She gave herself permission to listen for less, And in doing so, she understood more. That's something we don't talk about enough when we teach listening. We assume more is better. But in reality, in busy places, less is better. Short, clear, useful words are all you need. I've seen this with other learners too. Some of my students have said, "But Julia, I don't know enough vocabulary to understand announcements." And I always respond, let's make a list of the 10 words you do know. Are they words like delayed, platform, boarding, gate, canceled? When they realize they already know the most useful words, their confidence grows immediately. You don't need to know the full announcement. You only need to recognize a few key markers. You can even practice this when you're not traveling. Try watching short videos on YouTube or Instagram that show train station announcements or airport dialogues. Turn on the subtitles the first time, then listen again with your eyes closed. Try to catch just the important details, then pause and repeat out loud what you heard. This exercise helps your brain connect the sound to meaning without needing to translate in your head. There's one more thing Carla did that helped her. She accepted that she might make mistakes. She told me, I was okay with not getting everything right. I was okay with asking someone to repeat if I got confused. That made me brave enough to keep listening. And that's something I want you to remember. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay in the moment and trust your ear to guide you. So next time you're in a situation like Carla's, standing in a crowded train station or trying to follow a fast announcement, I want you to think of her story. Take a breath. Focus on the key words. Trust that your English is good enough for that moment, because it is. And the more you practice this kind of listening, the stronger and more confident you'll become. Let's talk about something many English learners struggle with, especially when they travel or find themselves in public places like train stations, airports, or city streets. That feeling when English is happening all around you, announcements echoing through speakers, people talking quickly, new accents you're not used to, and your brain trying to keep up with everything at once. It's like stepping into a storm of sound, and your mind is working overtime just to understand one full sentence. If you've ever felt that pressure, I want you to know, you are absolutely not alone. And the good news is there's a better way to listen. The biggest mistake I see learners make is trying to understand everything they hear. I get it. It feels like that's the goal. But in the real world, especially in noisy or fast-moving environments, understanding every single word isn't necessary. In fact, it slows you down. You become overwhelmed, frustrated, and unsure of how to respond. So today I want to show you a better approach. One that helps your brain work smarter, not harder. It starts with a small but powerful shift in mindset. Don't listen for all the words. Listen for the right words. Let me explain. Every conversation, every announcement, every interaction has a purpose. And usually that purpose is connected to a few key ideas: location, time, action, or choice. For example, if you're at a train station, you're usually listening for your platform number, your departure time, or any changes like delayed or canceled. That's it. Everything else in the sentence might be polite. Language, background information, or phrasing you don't need in that moment. So when you train yourself to listen with your goal in mind, your brain stops trying to catch everything and instead starts scanning for the words that actually help you take action. This is what I call targeted listening. It's like setting a filter on your brain. And yes, you can train this. Let's imagine a simple example. You're at the airport. You're waiting for a flight to Dublin, and the boarding announcement begins. The speaker says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now beginning the boarding process for flight BA837 to Dublin. All passengers in Group 1 may now proceed to gate A14 for boarding." That's a lot of words. But if you're listening with your filter turned on, your brain just needs to catch BA837, Dublin, Group 1, gate A14. That's all the information you need. The rest is extra. Now here's where it becomes practical. I want you to build your own listening filter, and the way to do that is through short, daily practice. It doesn't need to take more than 5 or 10 minutes. First, choose a focus area. Maybe travel, maybe shopping, maybe eating out. Then, write down a list of 10 words or phrases that are most useful in that situation. For travel, your list might include platform, gate, delayed, boarding, arrival, departure, canceled, ticket, passport, and baggage. Once you have your list, your job is simple. Each day you listen to one short audio or video related to that situation. It can be an airport announcement, a train conversation, or a travel vlog in English. Listen once with your list in front of you and circle or highlight the words you hear. Then listen again and try to say the words out loud as you hear them. You don't need to understand the full audio. Your goal is to catch those 10 words clearly and quickly. After a few days, something amazing happens. Your brain gets faster at recognizing the patterns that lead to those words. You'll start hearing gate before you even process the rest of the sentence. You'll hear delayed and immediately know what's going on, even if you missed everything before and after it. This is real listening. It's active, focused, and incredibly powerful. Let me give you another tip that helps when listening becomes stressful. Choose your focus before the listening begins. If you're waiting at a train station, tell yourself, I'm listening for a platform number and a destination. That way, your brain already knows what to look for. It's like walking into a room and scanning only for the color red. Your eyes ignore everything else. Your ears can do the same. It's also helpful to train your listening with different accents. We often study with one teacher or one course and get used to a certain way of speaking. But in real life, English comes in many varieties. A British announcement at Heathrow Airport sounds different from an American voice at JFK or a Canadian one in Toronto. So make your practice more effective by listening to voices from different regions. Don't worry if it feels difficult at first. The goal is to get your ears used to variation so that in real situations you feel more flexible and prepared. Another great tool is using transcripts, but in a very specific way. Let's say you find a recording of an airport announcement with a transcript. Read the transcript first and highlight the key words related to your goal. Then listen and try to match what you hear with what you see. Repeat the keywords out loud. If you don't have a transcript, no problem. Just write down the words you hear as you go. Focus on accuracy, not speed. If you're a more visual learner, try watching videos with subtitles turned on at first. Watch once with subtitles, and then again with them off. See how many keywords you can still catch. Then pause and say them aloud. It doesn't have to be perfect English. It just needs to be clear and useful to you. And I want to remind you of something important. Catching the right words is not a talent, it's a skill. And skills come with repetition. The more you practice in short, focused sessions, the better your listening will become. Your brain will get faster. You will feel more confident. And when you're standing in that real airport or walking down that real street, you'll feel ready. Many learners worry about not understanding native speakers, but what they really mean is they're not yet trained to catch the right words. It's not about knowing fancy grammar or rare vocabulary. It's about hearing what matters most in that moment. That's the skill we're building together. I've seen so many students go from anxious to calm just by shifting how they listen. They stopped thinking about grammar and started thinking about purpose. That's what I want for you too. So take this method and try it for yourself. Choose one setting. Make your list of keywords. Practice daily. And trust the process. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay curious and consistent. Your ears will learn what to catch. Let me introduce you to Jorge. He's a software engineer from Lisbon who loves traveling, especially to European cities with rich history and great food. But there was always one thing that made him anxious: restaurants. Not because he didn't enjoy the food or the atmosphere, he loved both, but because of the conversations. Simple interactions like ordering a meal or answering a question from the waiter made him nervous. Not because he didn't know English, but because he didn't trust his listening skills. He worried about fast speech, unfamiliar accents, and feeling embarrassed in front of other people. And because of that, he often avoided talking. He told me that when he traveled before, he would point at the menu or choose places where he could order by number. If someone spoke to him in English, he would smile, nod, and hope for the best. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it always left him feeling a little frustrated. He had studied English for years, read articles, watched movies, listened to podcasts. But in a real-life restaurant, he felt lost. He said, "I just couldn't catch what they were saying, and I didn't want to look stupid." When Jorge planned a short trip to Paris, he decided something had to change. He didn't want to keep avoiding conversations. He wanted to enjoy the full experience of traveling, And that meant participating, not just watching. So he made a small challenge for himself. He told himself, "This time I'll listen to the waiter. I'll try to understand at least 3 questions. That's all, just 3. He didn't expect to understand everything, and he didn't pressure himself to speak perfectly. His goal was simple: listen for a few common restaurant phrases and respond as clearly as he could. On his first night in Paris, he walked into a small, cozy restaurant not far from the Latin Quarter. He sat down, looked at the menu, and took a breath. When the waiter came over, Jorge stayed calm. He had prepared by practicing a few short phrases at home, and he had also listened to real restaurant conversations online. He had noticed a pattern in many of those conversations. There were always 1 or 2 common questions at the beginning of the meal. Sure enough, the waiter looked at him and asked, "Still or sparkling?" Jorge immediately recognized the question. He had heard that exact phrase in his practice. He smiled and said, "Still, please." Then the waiter asked, "Would you like a starter?" Again, Jorge had heard this structure before. He answered confidently, "No starter, thank you." Then, as the waiter took his order and started to walk away, he asked one more thing. "Anything else?" Jorge smiled again. "That's all. Thank you." Those 3 simple exchanges gave Jorge a new kind of confidence. Not because he had done something extraordinary, but because he had succeeded in doing something ordinary without fear. For the rest of his trip, he continued this small challenge. Listen for short questions, recognize the structure, and respond clearly. He wasn't trying to understand every word or impress anyone. He was simply practicing how to listen for real, useful English. What I love about Jorge's story is that it shows how much progress you can make with a small goal. He didn't need advanced vocabulary or complex grammar. He just needed to recognize a few short, repeated phrases and trust his ear to do the rest. He built this confidence through preparation, exposure, and a realistic goal. And the result? He finally enjoyed ordering in restaurants without stress. Let's take a moment to look at what Jorge actually did. First, he noticed a pattern. In most restaurant situations, there are a few common questions you can almost always expect. Questions like still or sparkling, would you like a starter, anything else, how would you like that cooked, dessert, or would you like the check? These questions are short, predictable, and repeated again and again. When you begin to recognize these patterns, your listening becomes much easier. Jorge focused his practice on those exact types of questions. He searched for short video clips of restaurant interactions. He used transcripts to identify the key questions. He repeated them out loud, so that both his ear and his mouth became familiar with them. And when he went into the restaurant, his brain was ready to listen with purpose. He wasn't trying to follow every word. He was just waiting for those questions he had already trained his ear to expect. This approach is something I teach all the time, and it works. One of the biggest challenges in listening is that we often feel pressure to understand everything. But if you know what types of questions are common in certain settings, you can narrow your focus. You begin to expect certain phrases. And when your brain expects something, it's much faster at recognizing it. Another thing Jorge did right was keeping his responses simple. You don't need long sentences to respond well. Short, clear answers are perfectly fine. If someone asks, starter, you can say, no thank you. If they ask, anything else, you can say, that's all. If you're unsure, you can always say, could you repeat that, please? These are small phrases, but they carry a lot of power. They show you're engaged, they help you stay calm, and they give you control over the conversation. So what can you learn from Jorge? You don't need to wait until you feel ready to understand fast, complex English. You can start right now by listening for the small questions that come up again and again in restaurants. Make a list, practice them daily, say them out loud. Find short dialogues online and focus only on those key questions. You'll be amazed at how quickly your ear starts to recognize them in real conversations. Jorge didn't change his English level overnight, but he changed the way he listened. He stopped waiting for perfect understanding, and he started listening for connection. And that made all the difference. When I talk to learners about restaurant English, one thing always surprises them: how predictable it is. People expect restaurants to be difficult because they imagine fast conversations, unfamiliar accents, and pressure to respond quickly. But the truth is, most restaurant interactions follow a pattern. And once you learn to recognize that pattern, you start to feel more confident, even if you don't catch every single word. Menus might change, the food might be different, but the rhythm of communication in restaurants stays almost the same everywhere you go. This is something I love teaching, because it transforms how people experience speaking English in public. I've seen students go from anxious to relaxed, just because they realize they've heard the same phrases over and over again without noticing. The magic happens when you stop listening for every word and start listening for what usually comes next. That's when listening becomes something fun, like a game of prediction, rather than a test of understanding. Let's break it down together. Think of the last time you ate at a restaurant, even in your home country. The process probably followed a clear order. You enter, someone greets you, they ask how many people are in your group, they guide you to a table, give you a menu, offer something to drink, then come back later to take your food order. That's the structure. And within that structure, the language is often repeated. The same phrases appear again and again, like familiar music in the background. In English, there are 5 or 6 common questions or comments that you'll hear in nearly every restaurant. These include, "Hi there, how many people? Would you like something to drink? Are you ready to order? Would you like a starter? How would you like that cooked? Anything else? Would you like the check?" You don't need to. Memorize 100 possible sentences. These few phrases are used everywhere, from small cafes to big city restaurants. And most of the time, they're said in the same order, with very similar words. The moment you realize this, you can relax. You don't have to wait in fear for the server to speak. You already know what they're probably going to say, so your brain doesn't need to work so hard. It can listen for keywords instead of trying to understand full sentences. It's like knowing the rules of a game. You know what's coming, and you know how to respond. Let's look at an example. Imagine you walk into a restaurant and sit down. A server comes over and says, "Hi, can I get you started with something to drink?" That's a longer version of, "Would you like something to drink?" Even if you didn't catch all the words, your brain recognizes the moment. It's time to order a drink. So you say, "Just water, thank you," or "A coffee, please." It doesn't matter which exact version of the question they used, you heard the key word, drink, and that's enough to guide your response. This is why I often tell learners, train your ear for situations, not for perfect grammar. If you practice listening by focusing on the context, you'll improve much faster. So instead of studying random vocabulary, take a short video or audio clip from a restaurant scene and watch it a few times. Pay attention to the order of the conversation. What happens first? What kind of questions are asked? How do people respond? I love using short, realistic dialogues for this kind of practice. You don't need long audio files or full movie scenes. A simple 30-second clip is enough. Listen once just to get the general idea. Then listen again and write down the exact questions. Ask yourself, is this something I've heard before? Will I hear it again in another restaurant? If the answer is yes, put it on your list. That list becomes your personal restaurant toolkit. And here's a fun tip. Create a mini restaurant. Script and act it out by yourself. Imagine you're the guest. First, pretend the server says, "Hi, how many people?" And you respond, "Just one, please." Then imagine they ask, "Would you like something to drink?" And you say, "Yes, a lemonade, please." Keep going through the common questions. Practice your answers until they feel automatic. You don't have to get every word right. Just be clear and relaxed. You'll also notice that restaurant English uses a lot of polite forms and soft questions. Things like, "Would you like?" instead of "Do you want?" or "Can I get you?" instead of "I will bring you." These phrases sound friendlier, and they help make the interaction more comfortable. The good news is they're easy to recognize. The moment you hear, "Would you like?" your brain can prepare a simple yes or no answer. Another thing to keep in mind is that pronunciation can vary, but the structure usually doesn't. So if you're in New York, you might hear, "What do you want to drink?" which sounds very fast and casual. But even there, your brain can still pick out the word drink. And in a more formal setting, like a London tea room, you might hear, "May I offer you something to drink?" Different accents, different tones, but the same meaning. This is why listening with intention is so powerful. When you stop trying to catch every detail and you start focusing on structure and purpose, your confidence grows naturally. You begin to notice that most people don't say completely new things in every situation. They repeat. They follow habits. And when you recognize those habits, you win the game. I encourage you to start noticing these patterns the next time you're in an English-speaking restaurant or watching a video about food. Listen not just to the words, but to the rhythm. What comes first? What's usually next? When do they bring the menu? When do they ask about dessert? Every time you pay attention to these moments, you're building listening strength. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be ready for the game. A game where the rules are simple, the moves are repeated, and the goal is to communicate clearly and enjoy your meal. Once you start thinking of it that way, restaurant English becomes something you can look forward to, not something to fear. Let me tell you a story about Sarah, a young woman from Stockholm who had always loved the idea of traveling through Europe and practicing her English along the way. She felt pretty confident about her language skills because she had studied English at school and used it at work occasionally. Still, like many people, she sometimes doubted her listening abilities, especially in real-world conversations where people speak quickly or with different accents. That was something she couldn't always prepare for. But Sarah was also curious and brave, and on her trip to Rome, she found herself in a situation that reminded her just how powerful mistakes can be when you're learning. One evening, Sarah was enjoying dinner at a small restaurant not far from the Colosseum. It was one of those warm Italian nights, and she was sitting outside under a row of string lights feeling completely at peace. She had ordered her meal confidently, chatted a little with the waiter, and was proud of how well things were going. English wasn't his first language either, but the communication was smooth. That gave her a sense of comfort and connection. After finishing her main dish, she leaned back in her chair and looked around, soaking up the moment. That's when the waiter returned to her table. He asked her something with a friendly tone. The words were clear, but her brain was a little tired after a long day of sightseeing and listening. She thought he said, "Would you like dessert now?" Sarah smiled and responded quickly, "Yes, I'd love a dessert." But the waiter looked confused. Then he smiled and said, No. I said, "Would you like the check now?" They both laughed. It was a genuine, friendly laugh, the kind of moment that breaks the ice. Sarah immediately understood her mistake and laughed too. "Oh," she said, "I thought you said dessert." He chuckled and replied, "No problem. But if you do want dessert, we have great tiramisu." That moment could have been embarrassing, but Sarah didn't let it be. Instead of shutting down or getting nervous, she used it as an opportunity to practice a skill she had recently been working on, clarifying. She asked, "Can I hear the question again?" And the waiter repeated it, this time even slower and clearer. "Would you like the check now?" That small mistake, followed by a laugh and a quick recovery, turned into a learning moment. Sarah walked away from that dinner not feeling bad about the confusion, but proud of how she handled it. She told me later, "I used to think I had to get everything right. But now I know that every mistake is a door to connection. It gives you a reason to interact more, not less." This is one of the most important things I want you to take from her story. Mistakes in listening are normal, and they don't mean failure. In fact, they often create more space for real, human interaction. They invite laughter, they invite repetition, and most importantly, they give you the chance to grow. Many learners believe that they must understand the first time, every time, and that any misunderstanding is a sign of weakness. But let's be honest, native speakers misunderstand each other all the time. We interrupt, we ask. For repetition, we clarify. That's normal communication. So when you're learning English and someone says something that you didn't quite catch or misunderstood completely, your job isn't to panic. Your job is to stay in the conversation. What Sarah did right that evening was very simple. First, she took the moment lightly. She didn't turn the mistake into something negative. Second, she asked for repetition. And third, she responded again with confidence and kindness. That's a complete win. It's communication in action. Let's look at the language involved. The two questions, "Would you like dessert now?" and "Would you like the check now?" are very similar in structure. They both begin the same way and end with just one different word. It's easy to confuse them, especially if your brain is tired or if you're focused on other things. What helps in these situations is learning to catch the final word in the sentence. That's often where the main idea is hidden. This is a listening strategy. I teach often, anchor your focus on the end of the question. The beginning might be polite or predictable, like, would you like? But the real action comes at the end. The check, a starter, sparkling water, the menu, and so on. That's where your attention needs to land. And if you miss it, it's okay. You have tools to fix the moment. Let's say you're in a similar situation and someone says something you're not sure you heard right. You can respond in a few easy ways. Sorry, did you say dessert or the check? Can you repeat that, please? I didn't catch the last word. What was it again? These are powerful phrases. They show confidence. They show that you're engaged and that you care about getting it right. And most people will respond with patience and kindness, just like that waiter in Rome. Often, these moments lead to a smile or even a small conversation. It's in these unscripted situations that your English becomes more real and more flexible. Another lesson from Sarah's story is how tone and body language help fill the gaps. She didn't understand the exact words, but the waiter's friendly tone made her feel safe to respond. This is something you can rely on as well. When someone is being kind or helpful, trust that the intention behind the words will support you, even if the exact sentence is unclear. People use tone, gestures, and expression to communicate, not just words. And you can learn to read those signals too. So yes, mishearings happen. They happen to everyone, including advanced speakers. The difference is how you respond. Do you freeze and feel embarrassed? Or do you stay in the moment, laugh if needed, and move forward with curiosity? Sarah chose the second option, and it made her stronger as a listener and a speaker. When you change the way you look at mistakes, everything shifts. A misunderstanding is not a sign that your English is broken. It's a sign that you're using English. It means you're participating, interacting, and learning. That's what matters. So next time you're in a restaurant, or really anywhere in an English-speaking environment and something sounds unclear, think of Sarah in Rome. Think of the way she smiled, clarified, and used the moment to connect rather than retreat. That kind of attitude turns everyday travel into powerful practice. And that's where fluency starts, not in perfection, but in these small human moments that we remember long after the trip is over. Let's talk about one of the most powerful tools you can have as an English learner, the ability to ask for clarification. I know that might not sound exciting at first, but trust me, it's one of the skills that gives you real power and freedom when you're using English in the real world. Whether you're in a restaurant, a store, or a train station, there will be moments when you don't catch what someone says. It could be because the person speaks too fast, the environment is noisy, or you're just tired. That's completely normal. It happens to everyone, including native speakers. What matters is how you respond in that moment. I've talked to hundreds of learners who say the same thing. They freeze when they don't understand. They get quiet. They nod and smile, even if they're confused. Some even walk away without getting the information they needed, just to avoid the embarrassment of asking for repetition. And I get it. When you're learning a new language, the last thing you want is to look confused or unsure in front of someone else. But the truth is, those small moments, when you ask a question, when you ask someone to repeat, when you say, "Sorry, I didn't catch that," those moments are where your confidence begins to grow. So let's flip the script. Let's stop thinking of clarification as a weakness. Instead, I want you to see it as a skill. A professional, mature, smart communication skill. Because it is. In every language, people clarify when they don't hear something or when they want to be sure. It's not awkward. It's normal. And in English, there are ways to do it that sound natural, polite, and confident. These phrases are your safety net. They're not complicated. They're short, friendly, and easy to use in any situation. Here are some of my favorites. Sorry, could you say that again? Excuse me, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat that, please? I'm sorry, what was that last word? Do you mind saying that one more time? Sorry, did you say... Repeat the word you think you heard? Each of these phrases is simple, but powerful. And they all work in a variety of settings. You can use them when the waiter asks you something you didn't expect, when a shop assistant speaks too quickly, or when you're at a train station and the announcement is unclear. These phrases are polite. They show that you're engaged, and they allow the other person to help you without any awkwardness. Now let me give you a few examples of how this sounds in real life. Imagine you're at a cafe in Dublin, and the barista says something fast, like, having here or taking away. That question can sound like one big word if you're not used to it. If you're not sure what was said, you could say, sorry, could you say that again? Or, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat it? Most people will immediately slow down or rephrase. And just like that, the conversation continues. No stress. Or maybe you're in a clothing store in Amsterdam, and the cashier says, would you like a bag? But you hear it as, would you like back? Because of the accent or the speed. You can say, sorry, did you say bag? That small question helps you confirm the word and stay in control of the moment. It's not about being perfect. It's about staying active in the conversation. There's also a trick I often share with students who feel nervous asking for repetition. Use body language to help support your words. A small smile, eye contact, or a gentle gesture can make your clarification feel friendly and natural. Communication is more than just words. It's tone, expression, and intention. When you combine these elements, people feel your sincerity and are happy to help. Another useful habit is to repeat what you heard and turn it into a question. This is great when you understood part of the sentence but want to confirm. For example, let's say someone in a shop says, it's $23.50. You can say, $23.50 with a questioning tone. That shows you heard something but want to be sure. Or in a restaurant, if someone asks, would you like a starter? And you're unsure, you can say, a starter? That little moment of confirmation helps you stay present and avoid guessing. What I love about these strategies is that they're easy to remember. You don't need to memorize grammar rules or learn complicated vocabulary. You just need a few phrases and the confidence to use them. And once you start practicing them in real situations, or even just in your listening practice at home, they become natural. I often recommend creating a clarification cheat sheet for yourself. It's just a list of 5 or 6 phrases you feel comfortable saying. Practice them out loud. Say them in front of a mirror. Use them when you're watching videos or listening to conversations. Imagine you didn't understand something and pause the audio to say, could you repeat that, please? You're training your brain to use these responses as a natural part of listening. And here's something I want you to remember. Asking for clarification doesn't make you look less fluent. It actually shows that you care about communication. It shows that you're engaged, focused, and willing to stay in the conversation until you understand. That's a strength. In fact, many native speakers will appreciate your effort and may even slow down, use simpler words, or repeat things more clearly, just to help you. Think of it this way. Every time you ask for clarification, you're building a stronger foundation. You're taking control of your learning. You're showing that you're not afraid to participate, even when things aren't easy. And that's the kind of learner who grows the fastest. You're going to have moments when you don't understand something. That's a fact. But now you have a plan. You have the words, the phrases, the tone, and the attitude to handle those moments with confidence. You don't need to freeze. You don't need to guess. You can speak up, ask, and move forward, because real communication is not about getting everything right the first time. It's about staying in the conversation until both sides understand each other. That's your goal. That's the journey. And with these tools, you're already well on your way. Let me tell you a story about Mateusz, a traveler from Warsaw, Poland, who had always been passionate about languages and discovering new cultures. He had studied English in school and continued to improve it on his own through podcasts, movies, and conversations with friends online. But like many learners, he found that real-life situations brought a different kind of challenge. Understanding English in the classroom felt manageable. Understanding it in a noisy cafe with background chatter and a fast-speaking server felt like an entirely different experience. Mateusz had always dreamed of exploring Berlin. The city's energy, diversity, and history drew him in. On his second day there, he decided to start his morning like a local, with a strong coffee and a pastry, from one of the popular cafes near Alexanderplatz. He had read about the place online. People described it as cozy but always full. That didn't bother him. In fact, he thought it would be the perfect chance to practice his English in a real environment, not just through an app or YouTube video. When he walked in, the cafe was exactly as described: busy, loud, and alive. The sound of people chatting in different languages, espresso machines steaming, and music playing in the background created a buzzing atmosphere. It felt exciting, but also a little overwhelming. Mateusz stood in line and tried to mentally prepare for the moment he'd speak to the server. He remembered what he had practiced: simple cafe phrases, common questions, and the usual rhythm of English in fast transactions. Then came his turn. The server greeted him with a quick, "Hi there, what can I get you?" Mateusz ordered a cappuccino and a croissant without hesitation. But then, right after he paid, the server asked another question, fast, casual, and surrounded by noise. At first, Mateusz didn't catch the exact words, but he heard the rhythm, that short, rising, falling tone he had practiced before, and his brain knew what was coming. For here or to go? He smiled and answered, "To go, please." Just like that, the moment passed smoothly. He got his coffee, his pastry, and a wave of confidence that stayed with him for the rest of the day. When Mateusz told me this story, he said something that stayed with me. I didn't understand every word, but I had trained myself to expect the question. So when I heard the sound of it, the rhythm, I knew what to say. I didn't panic. I just responded. That's the kind of listening we're talking about in this episode. Not perfect, complete understanding. Not translating every word in your head, just recognizing patterns, listening for the usual, and trusting your training. Mateusz had spent time preparing for cafe situations by listening to short audio clips online. He played scenes from ordering counters in English-speaking cafes and focused on one particular phrase that came up again and again. For here or to go? Sometimes it was dine in or take away. Sometimes it was, is that to go? No matter how it was said, the meaning was always the same, and the tone was often quick and casual. He trained his ears not just to recognize the words, but to feel the shape of the question. That's something I encourage all learners to do. Start noticing how certain questions sound, not just the words themselves, but the speed, the tone, the musicality of them. Our ears are very good at detecting patterns, especially when we listen to something repeatedly. You don't have to memorize every possible version of a question. You just need to hear it enough times that it becomes familiar. Your brain will do the rest. Mateusz didn't need to understand everything the server said that day in Berlin. He just needed to be ready for one question. And because he had prepared for it, the moment went well. That one success gave him more confidence to try again in other situations, buying train tickets, asking for directions, even joining a conversation at a museum. This story reminds us that preparation doesn't have to be complicated. Listening to 10 seconds of real conversation every day, repeating it out loud, and paying attention to tone can do more for your fluency than hours of grammar drills. You're not training to be a textbook expert. You're training to live in the language. That means focusing on what real people say, how they say it, and how you can respond simply and clearly. One of the best exercises you can do is to find clips of real interactions, especially from cafes, shops, or public spaces, and listen for those repeated patterns. Can I help you? Anything else? For here or to go? Would you like a bag? That'll be price. These phrases happen again and again, often in the same order. You can practice them the way Mateusz did. Listen for the rhythm, repeat the phrase, and say your answer out loud. You can even take it one step further. Pause after the question and answer as if you're really there. Do it multiple times until it feels natural. Say, "For here, please," or "To go, thank you," or even, "Can I get it to go?" You're building muscle memory. And the next time someone asks you that question in real life, your response will come easily. I also want to highlight how important it was that Mateusz didn't let the noise or the speed of the cafe stop him. He stayed calm. That's a big part of listening in public places, not letting the environment control your focus. You might not catch every sound, but if you know what to expect and you've practiced the key phrases, your brain can still find the meaning. That's what happened with him. The words came fast, but the pattern was familiar. Sometimes all it takes is that one phrase you've practiced, that one question you know how to handle. It anchors you. It gives you something to hold on to when everything else feels too fast or too loud. And every time you respond confidently, you build a new layer of trust in yourself. Mateusz didn't become fluent overnight, but in that one cafe in Berlin, he used everything he had practiced in a real, meaningful way. He didn't freeze, he didn't guess. He listened for the rhythm, and he responded. And that's what I want for you, too. Not perfection, but presence. Not full understanding, but enough. To keep the moment moving forward. You don't need to understand everything. You need to recognize the moment, trust your training, and respond with the simple tools you already have. That's the path to real confidence. That's how listening becomes your strength, even in the busiest cafes in the world. Let's talk about one of my favorite ways to improve your listening and speaking at the same time: audio shadowing. This technique is simple, powerful, and when you use it with real travel situations, like checking into a hotel, ordering in a cafe, or buying a train ticket, it becomes even more effective. I've seen learners grow their confidence in just a few days using this method. You don't need special tools, perfect grammar, or hours of free time. All you need is your attention, your voice, and a few minutes a day. So what exactly is audio shadowing? It's when you listen to a short piece of English audio, just a few seconds long, and immediately repeat what you hear, copying the word, rhythm, tone, and pronunciation as closely as possible. You're not translating. You're not thinking about every word. You're simply echoing the speaker. Think of it like walking right behind someone and stepping where they step. That's why we call it shadowing. Now here's why this works so well for travelers. When you're in an airport, hotel, shop, or restaurant, you don't need to understand everything. You need to catch key phrases and respond quickly. Audio shadowing helps your brain get used to the natural speed and flow of English in exactly those situations. When you've practiced repeating those real conversations, your ears know what to expect. You stop freezing when someone speaks quickly. You start hearing the message, not just the words. Let me walk you through how to do this. First, choose a very short audio clip. It can be from a travel video, a podcast, or a dialogue in an English textbook. Look for scenes in hotels, airports, or cafes. You want something that feels real. For example, a hotel receptionist might say, "Good evening, do you have a reservation?" Or someone at the airport might say, "Your gate number is A12. These are the types of sentences you'll hear again and again. Start by listening to one sentence. Don't try to understand it completely on the first try. Just listen. Then play it again and repeat it out loud exactly as you hear it. Focus on matching the speaker's tone, speed, and pauses. You might need to repeat it 5 or 6 times. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is familiarity. You're training your mouth to move like an English speaker. You're also training your ear to catch the sound patterns that matter. After you've repeated the sentence a few times, try to say it without listening. See if you can recall the rhythm. Then play it again to compare. This back and forth creates a feedback loop. It helps your brain notice the details, where the stress falls, how the voice rises and falls, and which words are linked together. You start to hear not just individual words, but chunks of language that go together. Let's try a real example. Imagine you're practicing a cafe conversation. The server says, "Would you like anything else?" That sounds simple, but it often comes fast, like, "Would you like anything else?" Shadowing that phrase helps you get used to how it really sounds, not how it looks on the page. When you hear it in real life, your brain says, "I know this one," and you feel ready. Another great reason to use shadowing with travel situations is because the phrases are usually short and practical. That makes them easy to remember and repeat. Phrases like, "I'd like a coffee," or "Is breakfast included?" or "What time does the train leave?" are all perfect for this kind of practice. Each one has a rhythm, each one has a melody, and shadowing lets you borrow that melody until it becomes your own. If you want to take it a step further, try recording yourself while shadowing. Play the original sentence, repeat it, and then listen to your voice. Don't judge, just observe. Are you missing any sounds? Are you speaking too fast or too slow? This isn't about sounding like a native speaker, it's about sounding natural and feeling comfortable. And remember, you don't need to shadow long conversations. In fact, shorter is better. Even 10 seconds of dialogue can be powerful if you practice it with focus. Try one new clip each day. After a week, you'll start to notice real changes. Your mouth will move more easily. Your ears will recognize familiar phrases faster, and you'll begin to feel less nervous in real conversations because your brain has heard these situations before in your practice. What I love most about shadowing is that it builds both listening and speaking in one simple activity. It connects your ears to your voice. It gives you instant feedback. And it helps you develop real-world fluency, the kind you can actually use when you travel. That's why I recommend it to every learner who wants to improve their English fast, especially for everyday situations. If you're not sure where to find audio, start small. Use scenes from travel vlogs, podcasts for learners, or videos about restaurant and airport dialogues. Find voices that are clear and natural. Don't worry about getting everything right. Just listen, repeat, and enjoy the rhythm. Over time, your ability to understand and respond will become stronger and more automatic. Here's a fun tip. Build a shadow bank. That means keeping a list of phrases you've practiced. Write down sentences you've shadowed that feel useful. Review them every few days. You'll start to see that many of them repeat across different situations. English, especially in travel contexts, is full of patterns. Once you've shadowed a few, you'll begin to hear those patterns everywhere. So when you're in a new city, at a train station, or ordering lunch in another country, you won't feel like you're starting from zero. You'll recognize the sounds. You'll hear the phrases you've already practiced, and you'll know exactly what to say. That's what shadowing gives you: familiarity, confidence, and the ability to stay calm in real-life moments. You don't need to wait for the perfect time. You don't need to spend hours. Just a few minutes of shadowing each day can shift the way you hear and speak English. Start today. Choose one phrase, repeat it, feel it, and let your ears lead the way. Let me tell you about Layla, a warm and curious traveler from Cairo who visited Amsterdam for the first time last fall. She had been working hard on her English for a few years, mostly by watching movies and practicing with her friends, but this trip was her chance to put it all into practice. She wasn't worried about grammar or long conversations. What she really wanted was to feel comfortable using English in real places: shops, cafes, and stations, just like any local would. But on her second day in the city, something unexpected happened that taught her a powerful lesson about how to listen beyond words. It was a cold afternoon, and the temperature had dropped more than she expected. She was walking along a street filled with small shops, and one of the windows caught her eye. There was a beautiful green jacket on display, exactly the style she liked. It looked warm, stylish, and practical. She stepped inside the store feeling a little nervous. She had practiced many shopping dialogues before, but now the background, noise, the new environment, and her excitement all made her feel slightly unprepared. Layla approached the clothing rack and touched the fabric of the jacket. At that moment, a friendly shop assistant walked over and said something quickly. The words came out fast, in a Dutch accented English, and she didn't catch the full sentence. All she heard was a blend of sounds, followed by a short pause and a warm smile. Her first reaction was to freeze. She thought, "I didn't understand that. What do I say?" But then she remembered something she had heard in a podcast about listening. You don't always need to understand every word to understand the message. So instead of panicking, she focused on what she could understand. The assistant had used a friendly tone. Her posture was relaxed. She was looking directly at the jacket. Her hands made a small gesture toward the coat. In that moment, Layla guessed that the assistant had probably asked something like, "Would you like to try it on?" Or, "Do you want help with the size?" Layla smiled back and said calmly, "Yes, I'd like to try it on." The assistant responded immediately with, "Sure, the fitting rooms are just over there." Success. Later, Layla told me that she had no idea if her guess was perfectly accurate. But what mattered was that she stayed in the moment. She didn't panic. She didn't apologize for her English. She used what she could observe: tone, gestures, eye contact, and gave a clear, confident answer. That response was enough to keep the conversation going and to get what she needed. That experience taught her something deeper than grammar or vocabulary. It showed her that communication is a full-body experience. We don't just listen with our ears. We listen with our eyes, with our intuition, and with our sense of the moment. And when you train yourself to notice these extra layers of communication, you become a stronger listener. even when the words feel too fast or too unfamiliar. Layla's story is so powerful because it reminds us that spoken English, especially in real-world situations, is not always clear or slow. Shop assistants speak quickly, servers in cafes might be distracted, train announcements can echo. That's real life. And you won't always be able to stop and ask someone to repeat. So instead, you learn to tune in to what the situation is telling you. In Layla's case, the situation gave her clues. The shop assistant looked at the jacket, smiled, and made a gentle motion. That was enough for Layla to make an educated guess. And even if she had been wrong, that would have been okay too. People are usually kind and willing to explain again or adjust their question. But she was right, and that success gave her more confidence for the rest of the trip. Now let's think about how you can train this kind of listening. One exercise I like to recommend is to watch short video clips, especially scenes in shops or cafes, and turn off the subtitles. Watch just the body language. Notice how people move, where they look, how their voices rise or fall. Then turn the sound back on and see how much you had already understood just from those physical cues. You'll be surprised how much your brain can gather without needing every word. Another way to practice is during your own shopping experiences. When you go to a store, even in your home country, start paying attention to the pattern of the interaction. What does the assistant usually say first? What's their tone? What kind of gestures do they use? Most shop interactions follow a similar rhythm: a greeting, a question about help, maybe a comment about size or price, and then a goodbye. These predictable moments help you prepare, and your attention to tone and body language fills in the gaps. One of my favorite strategies that Layla used, without even realizing it, was to respond to the energy, not just the sentence. The shop assistant had a friendly, helpful energy, and Layla met that with her own friendly energy. She didn't wait for the perfect sentence to form. She stayed present and answered with a sentence she already knew well. "I'd like to try it on." That response made the conversation flow naturally, and more importantly, it helped her feel like herself in English. When I share this story with learners, I always remind them, fluency isn't only about speed or vocabulary. It's about connection. It's about staying in the moment, even when things aren't clear. And it's about using everything you have: your voice, your face, your intuition, to keep the conversation alive. Layla walked out of that store wearing her new green jacket and a big smile. Not because she had understood every word, but because she had trusted herself enough to respond, to participate, and to enjoy the experience. That's what I want for you too. To stop waiting for perfect conditions, to stop worrying about full understanding, and to start using all your senses to listen, to connect, and to grow. The next time you find yourself in a shop and someone speaks too quickly, think of Layla. Focus on what they're doing, how they're standing, what they're pointing to, and how their voice sounds. You don't need to catch every word. You need to respond to the moment. That's where your real fluency lives. Not in perfection, but in presence. Listening in English is often thought of as simply catching every word perfectly, like a machine translating sentence by sentence. But that's not how real communication works. When I say real communication, I mean the way people talk naturally in busy markets, noisy airports, or crowded restaurants. It's messy, it's fast, and often you won't catch every single word. So how do you understand what's being said? The answer lies beyond vocabulary. It's in the tone, the emotion, the gestures, the whole package of communication. Today, I want to take you on a journey to understand why listening to tone and emotion matters just as much as listening to words. Let me start by sharing a simple truth. Words alone don't always carry the full meaning. Think about the last time you had a conversation in your native language. Maybe someone said fine, but you instantly knew from their voice and face that they were not actually fine. The word was clear, but the meaning behind it was very different. The same happens in English. You need to train your ears and eyes to catch those emotional signals that color the words and tell you what the speaker really means. For example, imagine you're in a busy market in London. A vendor calls out to you, "Special price today." If the tone is cheerful and inviting, you might feel welcomed, like the vendor really wants you to have a good deal. But if the tone is rushed or tired, you might understand that the vendor is just trying to get your attention quickly because the market is closing soon. Both the words and the tone give you clues about what's happening. This skill is especially important when you're in places with a lot of background noise. Airports, for example, are full of announcements and chatter. You might hear flight delayed or gate changed, but sometimes the words blend into the noise. In those moments, the tone of the announcement can tell you if it's urgent or routine. Is the voice calm and steady, or is there a hint of stress or excitement? This helps your brain decide how important the message is and what action you should take. One of the best ways to practice listening to tone and emotion is to watch videos or listen to recordings without reading the transcript. Focus on the way the person speaks, the rise and fall of their voice, the speed, the pauses, the emotion behind the words. Notice when the voice sounds happy, confused, frustrated, or excited. This kind of active listening helps you train your brain to go beyond words. Let me share a personal example. I was once at a busy train station in Paris trying to find my platform. The announcement came on the loudspeaker. The words were hard to catch because the station was noisy. But the tone of the announcement was clear. It was calm, slow, and steady. I could tell it was a normal message, not an emergency. That small feeling of calm helped me stay relaxed while I searched for the information on the boards. If the tone had been urgent or tense, I would have known something was wrong and looked for help immediately. Tone also helps in conversations with people. When someone asks, "Are you okay?" the words are simple, but the meaning changes completely based on how they say it. If it's asked with concern in their voice, you know they really care. If it's said quickly or distractedly, maybe they are just making polite conversation. Learning to listen to these differences will help you respond better and connect more naturally. Gestures and facial expressions add another layer. When words are unclear, a smile, a nod, or a hand gesture can give you a hint about what's being said. This is why watching people's faces and bodies is so important in real conversations. When you're in a restaurant and the waiter points to a dish on the menu while saying something, you don't need to understand every word to know they are recommending it. When you're in a shop and the assistant shrugs or gestures with their hands, they might be showing that they don't have your size in stock. These nonverbal cues fill the gaps in understanding and help you stay confident. I want you to try a simple exercise today. The next time you listen to English, either in a video or in person, pay close attention to the tone. Ask yourself, how does the speaker feel? Are they excited, calm, worried, or happy? What kind of body language do they have? How does this affect the meaning? You'll start noticing these details more and more, and your listening will improve naturally. Remember, English is not just about words. It's about the whole experience of communication. Tone and emotion carry messages that words alone can't. They help you understand when someone is joking, when they're serious, when they want to hurry you, or when they're being polite. When you listen this way, you'll feel more connected and less lost, even in noisy or busy places. So the next time you're in a market, restaurant, or airport, try to listen with your whole body, not just your ears. Trust the emotions and gestures you see and hear. They will guide you even when the words are hard to catch. This is the kind of listening that turns confusion into connection and nervousness into confidence. And as always, if this makes sense to you, consider subscribing to the English Talk community so we can keep helping you on this journey. I want to share a story about Jin Wu, a traveler from Seoul, South Korea, who found himself lost in the beautiful city of Prague. Jin Wu was excited to explore the winding streets and historic squares, but like many travelers, he knew that getting around could sometimes be a challenge, especially when English wasn't his first language. Before his trip, Jin Wu had spent time learning useful travel questions, phrases like, "Where is the nearest metro station?" or "How do I get to the old town?" He memorized these sentences carefully, feeling ready to ask for help if he needed it. But Jin Wu knew that learning questions was only one part of the puzzle. What worried him more was understanding the answers. When locals spoke quickly with their natural rhythms and accents, it was easy to feel lost again. That's why he decided to prepare by listening to fast English conversations. He focused on videos and podcasts where native speakers talked naturally, practicing how to catch the most important words even if he didn't hear everything. Jin Wu called this his listening filter, the ability to focus on key information and not get stuck on unfamiliar words. One afternoon in Prague, Jin Wu found himself standing at a crossroads, unsure which way to go to reach his hotel. He remembered his training and decided to ask for directions. He approached a local woman and asked, "Excuse me, Can you tell me how to get to the Charles Bridge? The woman smiled and started to explain quickly, giving several street names and turns. At first, Jin Wu felt overwhelmed by the speed and the unfamiliar words, but he didn't panic. Instead, he focused on listening for keywords he had prepared for, words like left, right, straight, corner, and bridge. Even though he didn't catch every word, Jin Wu's brain started to piece together the direction. He heard left, then 2 blocks, then right, and finally, bridge. He repeated these words softly to himself as the woman spoke, creating a mental map. When she finished, Jin Wu smiled and said, "Thank you. Left, 2 blocks, right, bridge." The woman nodded encouragingly, and Jin Wu felt a rush of confidence. This story is a perfect example of how listening isn't about catching every single word. It's about understanding enough to get by. Jin Wu didn't let his fears stop him. He trusted his practice, focused on important words, and used context clues to understand the meaning. That's the kind of listening I want all of you to develop. Another important lesson from Jin Wu's experience is the value of preparation. He didn't rely only on memorizing questions. He trained his ears to handle real, fast English. This made all the difference when it was time to understand directions. It's like having a toolkit, one tool to ask and another to listen. Both are necessary. If you want to practice like Jin Wu, start by learning a few key travel questions. Write them down, say them out loud, and use them often. Then, find videos or recordings of native speakers giving directions or explaining how to get somewhere. Listen carefully, but don't try to understand every word. Instead, listen for the words you know, prepositions, place names, numbers. These are your landmarks in a conversation. Also, try shadowing those recordings. Repeat the sentences right after you hear them, focusing on rhythm and tone. This trains your brain to recognize natural speech and helps you respond more quickly when you're in a real conversation. Jin Wu practiced this method for weeks before his trip, and it made all the difference when he needed help in Prague. It's also important to stay calm when you don't understand everything. Jin Wu could have panicked when the woman spoke quickly. Instead, he stayed patient and listened for clues. That patience is part of listening too. When you stay calm, your brain works better. You don't get stuck trying to understand one word. You look for the bigger picture. In real travel situations, people often speak fast or use unfamiliar words. That's normal. You won't always have the luxury of slow, clear speech. So training yourself to pick out the most important pieces of information is a skill that will take you far. It's not about perfection. It's about survival and connection. Jin Wu's story reminds me of how important it is to trust yourself. You don't need to understand everything to make progress. You just need to understand enough to keep going. When you focus on keywords, listen to tone, and use context clues, you'll find that English becomes less intimidating. You'll start to feel more comfortable asking for help and following directions, even in fast conversations. So if you ever find yourself lost like Jin Wu, remember this. You already have the tools you need. Trust your practice. Listen. For the important words, stay calm. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Real communication is about connecting, not about perfect grammar or understanding every word. I hope Jin Wu's story inspires you to keep practicing listening in ways that prepare you for real life. Listening to tone, picking out keywords, and staying patient are skills you can build. And when you do, you'll find yourself navigating new places with more confidence than ever before. One of the biggest challenges many English learners face is the speed at which native speakers talk. When you watch videos or listen to podcasts designed for learners, the speech is often slow and clear. But in real life, especially in busy cities, airports, shops, or restaurants, English speakers usually talk quickly. This can feel overwhelming, and it often leads to frustration or a sense of, I'm not ready. But here's the good news. Your brain can adapt to fast English. With regular practice, you can train yourself to understand the meaning even when words come quickly. Today, I want to share some practical ways to get comfortable with native speed, so you feel confident when the pace picks up. First, let's talk about why native speakers talk fast. It's not to confuse you or be difficult. It's just natural speech. When people are familiar with a topic, when they're comfortable, and when they're in everyday situations, their words flow smoothly and quickly. They link sounds together, shorten some words, and sometimes drop sounds altogether. For example, going to becomes gonna, want to becomes wanna, and did you sounds like didja. These contractions and reductions happen all the time in natural English, and they can make listening hard if you're expecting every word to be pronounced fully. But here's the secret. Native speed is actually very predictable. When you listen carefully, you'll notice patterns, repeated phrases, and common shortcuts. Your job is to train your ear to recognize those patterns. And the best way to do this is through focused listening practice that mimics real life. One simple exercise I recommend is called speed listening with repetition. Find a short audio clip of native English speech, ideally related to travel, shopping, or restaurants, since that's our theme. Listen to the clip once or twice without trying to understand everything. Let the sounds flow over you. Then play the clip again, but this time listen more carefully. Try to catch the keywords or phrases that you understand. After that, listen again and try to repeat small parts of the audio out loud, focusing on matching the speed and rhythm. At first, this will be challenging. The words will feel fast, and you might miss a lot. That's normal. The goal is not to understand every detail immediately, but to get used to the flow and sound of fast English. As you repeat this exercise over days or weeks, you'll notice your brain starts to fill in the gaps. You'll guess meanings from context. You'll recognize the shortened words and phrases more easily. Another great technique is called chunking. Native speakers don't speak word by word, they speak in groups of words or chunks. For example, instead of hearing, "Can you help me?" as 4 separate words, you'll hear it as one chunk. Can you help me? The trick is to practice listening for these chunks, which helps you understand faster speech because you're not trying to process each word individually. You can practice chunking by listening to dialogues and trying to repeat whole phrases instead of single words. This will improve both your listening and your speaking fluency. It's also helpful to expose yourself to different accents and voices. In real travel situations, you might hear English spoken by people from various countries, British, American, Australian, or non-native speakers with strong accents. Each speaker has a different speed and rhythm. By practicing with a variety of voices, you'll become more adaptable and confident in understanding fast English, no matter who is talking. One of my favorite ways to practice is through real-life videos of conversations in cafes, shops, or train stations. Watching and listening to real interactions teaches you what to expect, how questions and answers flow naturally, and how native speakers speed up or slow down depending on the situation. Don't worry if you don't catch everything at first. Watch multiple times. Use subtitles if you need to check meaning, but try to listen without them first. If you want to take your practice further, try recording yourself repeating fast phrases. This can be a little uncomfortable at first, but it helps your brain and mouth get used to quick speech. You'll notice your pronunciation improves and you become more confident in using English at a natural pace. Remember, the goal is not to speak like a native overnight or catch every word. It's to build your listening muscles so you understand enough to follow the conversation and respond naturally. Fast English becomes less scary when you practice regularly, and you'll find yourself enjoying real conversations more and more. So, start small. Pick short clips related to travel or shopping, listen to them at normal speed, repeat key phrases, and try chunking. Over time, your brain will adjust, and you'll find fast English easier to understand. You'll feel ready to ask questions in restaurants, catch announcements at train stations, and talk to shop assistants without hesitation. With consistent practice, fast English won't be a barrier anymore. It'll be a doorway to new experiences and connections. And I promise, once you get comfortable with native speed, your confidence will soar. You'll enjoy your travel adventures more because you'll understand the people around you. You'll feel calm in busy places because you'll recognize the language even when it flies by quickly. As always, if this approach feels helpful, consider subscribing to the English Talk community. We're here to support you on your journey to fluency, helping you practice practical skills that make real-life English easier and more enjoyable. I want to share a story about Allesia, a student from Milan who traveled to Dublin to study English and explore Ireland. Allesia was excited to experience a new culture, practice her English, and make new friends. Like many students, she loved shopping and found a beautiful dress in a local store. But after a few days, she realized the dress didn't fit well, and she needed to return it. This might sound simple, but for Allesia, returning an item in a foreign country with a different language was a little intimidating. When Allesia went back to the store, she was nervous. She knew she needed to explain why she wanted to return the dress and understand the store's return policy. She was worried she might miss important details or misunderstand the clerk, but Allesia had practiced listening carefully to conversations about shopping and returns during her English lessons, so she felt ready to face the situation. The clerk greeted her politely and started explaining the return process. The words came quickly, and some of them were new to Allesia. But instead of trying to understand every single word, she focused on listening for key phrases she had learned. Original receipt, within 30 days, and refund or exchange. These phrases helped her understand the most important parts of the explanation. Allesia also paid attention to the clerk's tone and gestures. The clerk smiled and used hand movements to show the timeline, pointing to an imaginary calendar while saying, "within 30 days." This combination of words and body language helped Allesia feel more confident and less confused. When the clerk asked if she had the original receipt, Allesia quickly remembered the phrase and said, "Yes, I have the receipt." This small but clear response made the clerk nod and proceed with the return. Allesia followed the instructions and received a refund for the dress. This experience taught Allesia that listening carefully for key words and phrases is more useful than trying to understand every single detail. It also showed her how important it is to stay calm and focus on the parts of the conversation that matter most. Even if the language feels fast or unfamiliar, paying attention to tone, gestures, and important words can help you understand and respond confidently. Allesia's story is a great example of how you can use your listening skills in real situations. When you're shopping, ordering food, or asking for help, don't get stuck trying to catch every word. Instead, listen for important phrases that you've learned and pay attention to how people speak and move. This will help you stay calm and take action. If you want to prepare for situations like Allesia's, try practicing listening to dialogues about returns, exchanges, or refunds. You can find videos or podcasts that explain these processes in simple English. Listen multiple times, focusing on the key phrases. Repeat them out loud and imagine how you would use them in a store. This kind of practice will help you feel more prepared and less stressed when you face similar conversations. Another tip is to make a list of useful phrases for shopping and returns, such as, "Do you have the original receipt?" "Can I get a refund?" Or, "Is there a time limit for returns?" Keep this list handy and review it often. When you recognize these phrases during a conversation, you'll feel more confident and ready to respond. Remember, it's normal to feel nervous in these situations. Even Allesia felt that way at first. But by focusing on key words and staying calm, she was able to complete her return successfully. That success gave her more confidence to keep practicing English and trying new experiences. The key takeaway from Allesia's story is that listening isn't about perfection. It's about understanding enough to communicate effectively. When you focus on what matters most, key phrases, tone, and gestures, you'll find that you can handle everyday conversations with more ease. So next time you go shopping or need to return something, think of Allesia. Listen carefully, stay calm, and trust that you can understand and respond. These small moments of practice will build your confidence and help you enjoy your English journey more fully. And as always, if this story and advice resonate with you, consider subscribing to the English Talk community. We're here to support your learning with real stories, practical tips, and encouragement every step of the way. Today, I want to share with you a simple but powerful challenge that can truly change the way you improve your English listening skills. It's not about studying for hours or memorizing complicated rules. Instead, it's about taking just one small step each day, a daily listening practice that fits easily into your routine and builds your confidence naturally over time. This challenge is designed specifically for situations you're likely to face when traveling, shopping, or dining out, so you can feel ready and relaxed when the moment comes to use English in real life. Here's what I invite you to do. Every day, choose one short audio clip related to travel, shopping, or restaurants. It could be a podcast segment, a dialogue from a learning app, a video of a real conversation, or even a short announcement. The key is to keep it brief so it doesn't feel overwhelming. The goal is quality, not quantity. You want to train your brain to focus on English in manageable pieces. The first time you listen to the audio, give it your full attention. Find a quiet moment and really concentrate on the sounds, the rhythm, and the meaning. Try to catch the main ideas, even if you don't understand every word. Don't rush to translate or analyze every sentence. Just listen with curiosity and openness as if you're hearing a story or a conversation unfold naturally. Notice the tone of voice, the way the speakers use pauses or stress certain words, and how the conversation flows. This focused listening is important because it teaches your brain to process English naturally. After you've listened carefully once, play the same audio a second time. But this time, do it while you're doing something else, maybe cooking, walking, or commuting. This background listening helps your brain get used to English sounds in a relaxed way, without the pressure to understand everything immediately. It's like letting English become part of your daily environment, making it familiar and less intimidating. Once you've listened twice, here's a small but very effective step. Pick one phrase from the audio and repeat it out loud. Don't worry about pronunciation being perfect. Focus on the rhythm and the flow of the phrase. Say it with confidence. This repetition helps your mouth get used to the sounds and your brain remember the I patterns. It's also a way to practice speaking without stress. Why does this simple challenge work? Because small, consistent actions create powerful habits. When you do a little bit every day, your listening skills improve steadily. You build muscle memory for English sounds, and your brain learns to predict what comes next in conversations. Over time, those short practice moments add up to real fluency, helping you understand faster speech, different accents, and natural expressions. This challenge also helps you stay motivated. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by endless study goals, you focus on achievable daily steps. You'll start noticing that listening becomes easier and more enjoyable. You might catch words or phrases that used to feel impossible. You'll gain confidence to ask questions or order food without hesitation. One thing I want to remind you is that progress takes time and patience. Some days you might understand a lot, and other days only a little. That's perfectly normal. The important part is to keep going, keep listening, and keep practicing. Celebrate your small wins. Each phrase you repeat, each conversation you follow, each moment you feel less lost. That's success. You can tailor this challenge to your own life. If you have more time, listen to longer audios or repeat more phrases. If you're busy, just focus on one short clip and one phrase. The key is consistency, not perfection. I also encourage you to choose materials that interest you. If you love traveling, find audios about airport announcements or hotel check-ins. If you enjoy food, listen to restaurant dialogues or cooking shows in English. If shopping is your focus, try listening to conversations in stores or markets. When the content feels relevant and exciting, practice becomes fun and meaningful. Remember, listening is a skill like any other. It grows with practice. Your brain needs time to adjust to the sounds and rhythms of English, especially at native speed. This daily ASI challenge helps you train your brain in a way that fits your lifestyle, making English a natural part of your day. So, starting today, take just one short audio related to travel, shopping, or restaurants. Listen carefully once, then listen again while doing something else. Repeat one phrase out loud. That's all it takes. One step a day. Small, steady practice is the path to real progress. And if this challenge feels helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the English Talk community. We're here to support you with stories, tips, and encouragement as you build your listening skills and gain confidence in English. Together, we'll make your English journey enjoyable and effective, one small step at a time.